Hi, guys. This is Melissa with the Face of Malpractice. And today I wanted to actually walk through what are the things that cause setbacks or waves going through benzo withdrawal or benzo injury, which is formerly known as bind, benzodiazepine induced neurological dysfunction. I think there is a general list that we see in the benzo community. I think that also everyone is different and everyone sits somewhere differently on the spectrum of bind. So it is important to take back your reverence and make these decisions for yourself, do research. I'm glad to provide this list based off of my own personal experience and what I see generally in the community, but it is important to know that you need to take back this reverence. You need to make this decision. Do your research. Do listen to other doctors that are specialists in the space, and before making any decision on things that you decide to do during benzo tapering and benzo injury. But for today, I'm going to compile what I see generally, and again, refer to my own personal experience. We could jump into that list now. So the first one would be avoiding alcohol. I think that that should be really obvious, even for general doctors. Doctors don't seem to understand much about how benzos impact the brain and that how nothing works in isolation, but they do know to say avoid alcohol. And that's because alcohol works on the same GABA A receptor. So let's use this as an example. This is a GABA A receptor, and GABA, which is an amino acid, binds to this spot where the benzo binding spot is on this side, right on top, holding it open to allow the chloride through. Okay. And so what happens with alcohol, it binds to right on this location on the GABA A receptor. Okay. So it suggests there's similar activity. The goal is to allow chloride through. The idea is to relax the body. So I just wanted to kind of give you some explanation of why we should be avoiding alcohol, because it works on the same receptors. Personally, I I never drank alcohol throughout benzo tapering and benzo withdrawal. I was never a drinker in the first place. I was too busy training and exercising to focus on that. But I would say, I don't remember how many months. Maybe it was like I think it was 18 months in. My husband ordered penny alla vodka, and I had less than a handful because I was just, when you go through this journey, you're just so exhausted and you just wish you could eat anything just to like soothe your suffering. And I have never been a big eater actually, and all I wanted to do was like eat anything just to help my suffering slightly. And so when my husband ordered that, I did have a handful of it and I had a major setback. So I could almost even taste the vodka in the sauce, which suggests that they did not do a great job diluting it. Ideally, when you cook with vodka sauce, you should be cooking long enough for it to be diluted. And so in that theory, I should have never really had that major reaction, but because it wasn't diluted, ooh, I had a major setback. I mean, I for like months, for 3 months, I think it lasted. It was like nonstop, this migraine. It felt like the strap around my head, but it was only tighter. I mean, these are symptoms I already dealt with. It was 24/7. I could hardly open my eyes. I mean, and I had to work through it, unfortunately, from bed. Um, it was not worth it. It was not worth that handful of penny vodka. I will never touch it again going through this journey, to say the least. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I would avoid antidepressants or other psych drugs. If someone is already on that, that's one thing. And I know that if like there are psych drug specialists that would probably advise coming off of those drugs before benzos, to be honest, because they tend to be easier than benzos. However, I know that's not the reality for many people. And so being on it is one thing. I would try to avoid adding any other psych drugs while going through benzo withdrawal and benzo injury bind. Um, I think it's quite evident that other brain receptors outside of our GABA receptors and even glutamate are impacted. According to the Dr. Ashton manual, she also suggests that all neurotransmitters are altered due to the direct impact of benzos or secondary impact. So it is important to keep that in mind. Really, the way out for all of us is just time. I think diet is a big thing that can certainly help, to help remove that inflammation, help remove the things that are causing stimulation. But it is time. Time is what gets us out of this. Number 3, antibiotics I would avoid as much as possible, especially fluoroquinolones. So fluoroquinolones act as an antagonist to the GABA receptor, meaning that they can detach. I'll use this example again. They can, so here's the benzo receptor on the GABA A receptor. It takes that exact same spot, okay? Not the other side, not in the middle, that same binding spot. So what happens is if you take a fluoroquinolone, it can detach the benzo, and you're now in cessation. And there is unfortunately nothing you could do from there. Taking another benzo will not reattach to that binding spot. And that is certainly life-threatening for us. So it is important to keep that in mind. Outside of that, let's say you're already off the benzos. I mean, there's such risks that come with fluoroquinolones. There is a neurological condition called FLOXT, which has a lot of the same symptoms that we go through benzo withdrawal. So overall, unless it is life and death and there is nothing else that could be taken, I personally would not touch a fluoroquinolone from that perspective. And then when it comes to other antibiotics, I think the general rule of thumb is to, if it is a must, I would take the most gentlest antibiotic possible. I would personally look on Benzo Buddies to see what has helped other people. It is important to know that antibiotics and viruses all run through the central nervous system. So infections, viruses, antibiotics all run through the central nervous system. So if we already have a down-regulated central nervous system, what I have found is that that only further pushes us on the spectrum of bind. So I have taken antibiotics. I think it was microbid and diflucan. So one was an antibiotic and one is an antifungal. I had thought I had a UTI, which was not the case by any means. And I took both of them. And it was like my nervous system was put into an air fryer and fried and then put back into my body. So it went horribly wrong for me. I am sharing this context because I think it's really important. If I was to find I had an infection, I would look at natural remedies. I would 100% look at natural remedies first. So for example, if it is a UTI, I would take a piece of garlic, poke holes in it, and put it between the lady lips. I would take a cup of water with a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. I would use coconut oil down there to help with the pH. There are natural antibiotics. So you could speak to a homeopathic or a functional doctor that can show you which natural antibiotics, which tend to be herbs and natural, right? So I would personally go down that route before ever considering taking another antibiotic personally. And again, I would look on Benzo Buddies. If it is a must and it's needed to survive, then look at Benzo Buddies for the ones that have had the least impact on people. Okay. For supplements is quite an interesting topic. So I have seen many people have symptoms and setbacks from taking a vitamin that is specifically GABAgenic, so works on the GABA. At the same time, I have seen people take vitamins and supplements and it start helping them. I think the ones that I see, it's so interesting, ones that I see that impact the most are the vitamins that work on the neurological system, like ashwagandha and stuff like that. But it is true. So just from my perspective, I'm now 30 months into Benzo Injury. And I started recently, so the last few months, I started taking certain supplements. I take vitamin B, I take thyroid S, and I take glutathione. And all I actually think has been helpful to me. I've had no personal negative effects, but I also know that I would have probably never have touched these earlier than I did. My body was not ready at that point to handle vitamins. So let's continue. 5, diet. So I would definitely avoid sugar and carbohydrates, as carbohydrates do convert into sugar in the body. So if you're someone like me that has a lot of hormone damage because of benzos, it's specifically insulin receptor damage. So I'm someone that has to eat, like I was someone that had to eat every 30 minutes to an hour max. Um, Otherwise my symptoms would increase so dramatically. And that was really difficult. Just eating was so difficult, to be honest. So if that is your case, then removing the carbohydrates and sugars are going to be really helpful. So for me personally, I went carnivore at near the 2-year mark, a little earlier than two years, maybe 20 months. And that made the biggest change for my insulin receptors. And that's when I really started to see any change, to be honest, was going carnivore in my case. I think going carnivore or keto or paleo diet, low carbohydrate, low sugar diet. I mean, I think these are really important. I also think there are people that going vegan helps them. And I think that's important to keep in mind. I think it would be foolish to say only one diet works. I think we're all different. We're all our own snowflake. And it's to try what works for you. In my case, it is going carnivore or a ketogenic or a paleo diet is what works best for me. So let's continue. 6, I think this is the most difficult one to share, but it is important to know this. I would avoid going to the doctor or hospital as much as possible. It is true these doctors are unfortunately not educated on the effects of benzos or any psych drug in that matter. Um, if you need to go or you feel the need to go, I would just be cautious of what medications you take. And I would not take anything unless there is black and white evidence of an illness, because our illness simulate every illness out there, and we're so commonly misdiagnosed and then polydrugged. So I think that's really important. I think it's also really important to trust your gut and intuition. That's probably the best advice anyone could give anyone is trust your gut. Your gut and intuition will not fail you. I don't care that we're going through benzo withdrawal and it feels like we have lost our soul, because that's true. It feels like we have nothing, but your gut and your intuition is still there. Listen to that. That will be your greatest compass. Okay. Also, when you go to a doctor, I mean, to give yourself control and power back, I would bring the Dr. Ashton manual. Print it out and bring it with you. Also, print out the drug insert of your benzo or psych drug, because on your drug insert, it states a lot of the symptoms that we're experiencing, and it also refers to protracted withdrawal syndrome, which is benzo injury. So that doctor may not understand what that is, but it is right there and you're able to leverage that. This is what I have. This is what I'm experiencing. And so I need to cross out anything else because this is what I'm experiencing. So again, it's about you taking back control and reverence of your life. We ended up here by giving reverence to these doctors. And I can assure you, majority of us had a gut inkling that this wasn't the right direction for us, and we still ended up on it. 7, I would avoid the heat. So again, everyone is different. So if you're someone that can tolerate heat, that's great. Unfortunately, many of us cannot, and the heat absolutely can cause a major setback. I've had, I think, 1 or 2 major setbacks because of heat. Unfortunately, I'm in Florida, which is probably the worst place for me to be given going through benzo withdrawal and injury. But it is important to keep that in mind. Also, so number 8, also, I think another one is the cold. So personally, I could not handle the cold, especially for the first like 15 months, 16 months, probably. Like I could not, it was so difficult to go outside if it was cold out. All of us, like even leaving my bedroom. So I would be in one bedroom and just leaving that other bedroom and that temperature change, it felt like a grenade went off in my sinuses. I know that's not the most common symptom, and maybe even considered a rare symptom. It certainly was in my case. So I'm sharing this in case you're sensitive to the cold, and you may not even be realizing that's what happens when you leave your bedroom or leaving your house. And also if you have like, some people have a lot of itching or it feels like bugs are under the skin. I found that cold air definitely irritated that for me. 9, I would avoid pushing our body. So it is important that we move our body as much as we can. If you are bedridden, even like moving your shoulders, micro movements go so far. Like if you ask an educated doctor that understands the body, they would 100% agree. Any movement is better than no movement. So if that is all you can do, then do it. But it is also true that if you push your body too much and you're walking too many minutes or too many miles, that can cause a setback. Let's see. Number 10, I would avoid drinking coffee or soda, which is a stimulant. I think those are pretty obvious. I know that's really hard for a lot of people, but it does stimulate us and it does increase symptoms. 11, obviously don't smoke. I also know that's easier said than done for some, but that also does stimulate us. I think on the topic of marijuana, I have seen people have severe setbacks for like 6 months plus by smoking, and I've seen people that it helps. So I think that's you. No one can tell you how you're going to react. No one, no doctor, me, nobody, no one in the community. Everyone is different. So you need to start figuring out what that looks like for you. Okay. 12. So I wouldn't go into a closed environment like a doctor's office without a face mask or hand sanitizer. We need to avoid getting colds and infections and viruses, right? Viruses are infections. But we do need to avoid that because it does run through the central nervous system and it could cause major setback. Unfortunately, I have gone through it twice. They were both the same viruses, not COVID, ironically. Those are the times I didn't want to be here. Like, I mean, I didn't want to be here the whole time, but that was so testing, to say the least. I wouldn't wish that on anyone going on top of what we're going through. So please keep that in mind. Sanitize your hands, have your caretaker, or whoever's with you, remind you, have them hold the spray and spray your hands. That's what my husband does. He's the one for a while. He had to be the one to recognize when to do that because I was just gone at that point. So it is important to note that. 13, I would avoid the news or social media, anything that causes stress. Like I know we kind of develop this OCD obsession behavior going through this. It is an actual effect of the drug going through withdrawal and bind. So if like, I'll give you an example, something that could help you is, and it helps me, is that I'll put my social media apps in a lockbox on my app, on my mobile device. And my husband will have the key code to it. And so I basically have to ask my husband for permission to get access to these apps. And it's in my best interest. I mean, there are times that I scream at him, I yell, give me access, this and that. But I do know it's in my best interest because I can't handle it. Like I'm 30 months and I still cannot handle being on social media. And I only started recently. For over 2 years, I avoided all social media, all TV. Unfortunately, I had to work through the journey and I had major physical consequences for that. But I know that social media can be helpful for some of us in certain moments, but generally it can cause major symptoms for us. Okay. 14, avoiding too much light or screens. So I think everyone, again, is different, but we do tend generally to have major sensitivity to light. I found getting Theraspec glasses, which are specifically for brain injuries, TBIs. And I can validate that this is significantly worse than a brain injury, at least the one I had, and my brain injury was horrible. So that brain injury felt like a walk in the park. It was like getting ice cream compared to bind and benzo withdrawal, unfortunately. So those glasses really helped me. I also wear these glasses. These are also for brain injury, funny enough. So they're called prism glasses. They help the eyes focus, and there's also a blue tint to them. You probably can't see it in the screen, but they help focus my eyes. I actually had these before because of my brain injury, because my focusing system was disabled. going through the brain injury. So these help me now more than they did then, for sure. So these are just some suggestions, but avoiding light as much as possible, but you also don't want to pull yourself 100% away from light. Like, the nervous system has to get used to something. At some point, we can't just be hiding in the dark on the couch all day, right? We need to start teaching our nervous system how to get used to these things again. But it is important to keep in mind, like, the amount of throwing up I went through because of light and the screen. I mean, every day for 2 years, I threw up. Less than 2 years, probably up to 18 months. I was throwing up every single day, multiple times, because of looking at a screen or because of the light. 15. So I would let family and friends know not to startle you or us in general, right? Because I think that causes such an increase. Our cortisol is impacted. We have anxiety. We get so scared, and it just increases all of our symptoms, dizziness. I would just avoid it. We had to put a sign on outside of our door to not ring the doorbell, because it would just put me into overdrive if someone rang the doorbell. It was so startling to me. Let's see, where are we? 16, avoid positions that cause electrocutions. Now, I know that doesn't happen to everyone. I do know it happens to plenty of people. And it is so devastating going through electrocutions. So if we could avoid positions that would electrocute us, we just need to do that. It does get better. I'm someone that had severe electrocutions. I couldn't turn my head left or right or up or down, or even open my mouth by 1 inch. I would get electrocuted. Couldn't lay on my back, couldn't turn to my left. In bed, I laid on one side and I didn't move for a very, very long time. So now, though, like, I am able to move a lot more. I don't really worry about electrocutions. I don't lay still on my back, but I do turn to the left. I can feel it. Kind of feels like the strings, the nerves are being pulled as I'm turning to my left, and I have to do it laying on my stomach because I cannot lay on my back. But it does get better. I don't really worry about electrocutions too much anymore. Does it happen? Yes, but very gentle if it does. So it is a very different game. It will go away. All of our symptoms will go away. We will all heal in time. So keep that in mind. You just have to get through it. 17, cut your hair. So I bring this up because I was one of the people that have suffered extraordinarily because of my hair. I've refused to let it go. I had lost everything at that time, and it was the only thing I had left of me. Like, I had no idea who I was. I didn't look like myself. I didn't feel like myself. I mean, we grieve our body. We grieve who we are through this. So my hair was the only thing I had left of me. And so I refused to cut it, and with the help of my husband. So my husband was the one that was taking care of my hair, since I could not. I mean, I was fully disabled. There was no taking care of my hair. So my husband would have to untangle my hair. It would take weeks, hours. That's a whole nother topic. Was it worth it? Looking back, absolutely not. Cut your hair. Cut your hair, cut your hair, cut your hair. I can't say that enough. It was not worth it. I never expected it to be this long. I thought 3 months I would be done, and that I just kept preserving it in the hope that I was going to have a miracle. So when that didn't happen, I'm now years, and I still have my hair. I keep it in braids, as you can see, because I have such neuropathy. I have to distribute the weight of my hair, because if I kept it down, I couldn't do it. And these are double the size of braids now. I'm 30 months. These braids used to have to be half this size for me to be able to manage it for a couple weeks until the next time my husband would help me wash my hair. So not worth it, not worth it, not worth it at all. And I think that's pretty much it. I know there's absolutely other things. Please, anyone add other things to the comments. I'd be curious to what you're seeing or your experience. The name of the game is to get through it. I can't say this anymore. And I'm going to tell you what another medical expert in this space had told me that became my mantra. Your only job is to make it alive to the next day. That is our only job. That is it. Make it to the evening, to make it through the night, to make it to the morning, to make it through the next day. So we need to do whatever it takes to keep us alive. Whatever those distractions look like, do it. I would avoid other psychiatric drugs. I would avoid medications. I would avoid doctors and hospitals as much as possible. Obviously, you need to do what you need to do. I know people need to do surgeries at times. I know that, like, I get it. I totally get it. But it is important to keep in mind that they are not educated on the effects. And this is a very lonely road for us, okay? But your only job is to make it to the next day. You will heal. We all do. Everyone is different. The timeline is different. I cannot tell you what the timeline is going to be. No idea. But I can tell you everyone heals, and so will you, and so will I. I know that. Just make it to the next day. Okay. All right, guys, that's it from me. Let me know if there's anything, any topics you wanted me to cover. And in the meantime, best of luck with everything. Bye, guys.